November 20th, 2016. Solemnity of our Lord Jesus Christ, King of the universe.
A reading from the second book of Samuel. In those days, all the tribes of Israel came to David in Hebron and said, "Here we are, your bone and your flesh. In days past, when Saul was our king, it was you who led the Israelites out and brought them back. And the Lord said to you, 'You shall shepherd my people Israel, and shall be commander of Israel.'" When all the elders of Israel came to David in Hebron, King David made an agreement with them there before the Lord, and they anointed him king of Israel. The word of the Lord.
Let us go rejoicing to the house of the Lord. Let us go rejoicing to the house of the Lord. I rejoiced because they said to me, "We will go up to the house of the Lord." And now we have set foot within your gates, O Jerusalem. Let us go rejoicing to the house of the Lord. Jerusalem, built as a city with compact unity. To it the tribes go up, the tribes of the Lord. Let us go rejoicing to the house of the Lord. According to the decree for Israel, to give thanks to the name of the Lord. In it are set up judgment seats, seats for the house of David. Let us go rejoicing to the house of the Lord.
A reading from the letter of St. Paul to the Colossians. Brothers and sisters, let us give thanks to the Father, who has made you fit to share in the inheritance of the holy ones in light. He delivered us from the power of darkness and transferred us to the kingdom of His beloved Son, in whom we have redemption, the forgiveness of sins. He is the image of the invisible God, the firstborn of all creation. For in Him were created all things in heaven and on earth, the visible and the invisible, whether thrones or dominions or principalities or powers. All things were created through Him and for Him. He is before all things, and in Him all things hold together. He is the head of the body, the church. He is the beginning, the firstborn from the dead, that in all things He Himself might be preeminent. For in Him all the fullness was pleased to dwell, and through Him to reconcile all things for Him, making peace by the blood of His cross, through Him, whether those on earth or those in heaven. The word of the Lord.
A reading from the Holy Gospel according to Luke. The rulers sneered at Jesus and said, "He saved others. Let him save himself, if he is the chosen one, the Christ of God." Even the soldiers jeered at him. As they approached to offer him wine, they called out, "If you are King of the Jews, save yourself." Above him there was an inscription that read, "This is the King of the Jews." Now one of the criminals hanging there reviled Jesus, saying, "Are you not the Christ? Save yourself and us." The other, however, rebuking him, said in reply, "Have you no fear of God? For you are subject to the same condemnation, and indeed we have been condemned justly, for the sentence we received corresponds to our crimes. But this man has done nothing criminal." Then he said, "Jesus, remember me when you come into your kingdom." He replied to him, "Amen, I say to you, today you will be with me in paradise." The Gospel of the Lord.
November 20th, the Solemnity of Christ the King. The first reading comes from 2 Samuel 5, 1-3. In this passage we hear about how the tribes of Israel come down to Hebron, where David is king over the southern 2 tribes, and asks them to be king over the entire land. One of the successors of Saul, who had been king over the 10 northern tribes, had been assassinated, and now they want David to shepherd the people of Israel. This image of shepherd is often used in the Old Testament for the king. He was to be a shepherd who protected the flock. And in fact, Jesus himself uses this image, following the example of Ezekiel the prophet, who speaks about how the kings of Israel were to be good shepherds who protected the flock. The second reading is from Colossians 1, 12-20. In this passage, we hear about how Jesus has delivered us from darkness, and he is the image of the invisible God. The word image in Greek is icon. An icon in Greek theology is something that not only represents the other thing, but actually makes it present. He is the firstborn of all creation. That was wisdom in the Old Testament. Jesus is wisdom incarnate. The author of this hymn was trying to describe how Jesus could pre-exist, and he uses the image of wisdom as his way of saying that. Everything in heaven and on earth was created, visible and invisible. That is a very powerful thing to say because Jesus became incarnate, and the Greeks considered that which was material to be inferior to that which was spiritual. Therefore the thrones, dominions, and principalities and powers, which are choirs of angels, should theoretically be more important than Jesus, because they're totally spiritual while Jesus was incarnate. And this hymn proclaims that Jesus is in charge of everything. He is also the head of the church, the firstborn of the dead. Firstborn, he is the first one to rise from the dead, but also a promise that we would all rise. And he is the fullness. In Greek philosophy, there were a series of emanations that came from the uncreated Creator. This is where we get our idea of the choirs of angels. And all together, they were able to express the fullness of God. Jesus can express the fullness of God in himself. He doesn't need all these emanations. He is the fullness of the goodness and the truth and the presence of God. And he's made peace by the blood of his cross. He's not only eternal wisdom, incarnate wisdom, he is also our Savior. The Gospel is from Luke 23, 35-43. People jeer at Jesus while he's on the cross, and he's crucified between 2 thieves. Now this is the only Gospel, Luke, in which there is a good thief and a bad thief. What does the good thief say? He talks against the bad thief who's mocking Jesus, saying, "We deserve what we're getting. This man was just." And what does Jesus say? "Remember, today you'll come into my kingdom." When will this man be saved? This very day. He'll be with Jesus in paradise. Remember, in the Gospel of Luke, salvation is not something you have to wait for. It's something that's already happening in our midst. And this man will experience salvation, and in fact is already experiencing it as he's hanging on the cross and dying. Because salvation is not when everything is perfect. Salvation is when we are living in the love of Christ. And may God bless us.